the sheet here. Good. Okay. So, for our massage today, we're going to keep the sheet on because we can get away without using any massage medium, and that way I can get in deeper but also disperse the pressure a little bit so that it's not too intense. Okay? Just makes it a little easier and a little cleaner. Okay, so I'd love to start with your back if you don't mind. Okay, I'm just going to get a feel for what's going on here. Mind if I just move your arm a little bit here? Okay. Here. Good. Makes it a little more open. Okay. So, have you had a deep tissue massage before? Alright, so one of the keys here is that in deep tissue does not mean massage but more harder, but it's more that we are working into deeper layers of the tissue, suggested by the name. But it doesn't mean that we're going to get really hard, really heavy in there. It might be intense, it shouldn't be painful, or it should be more like a pain that feels good. Okay, so we do have a good amount of tension up here. Just want to assess a little bit more into here. Yeah, a bit in the sacral area. Okay, so let's go ahead and do just some warming up. But deep tissue is less for relaxation and more for the therapeutic benefit. So sometimes we work slower so that we can work deeper. We use different kinds of moves. Okay. Let's see what we've got here. So I'm going to start up here. We're really going to assess and see what's all tangled up, what we can do about it. Yeah, I want to work just this side first, so we're a little more targeted. And I do have a tool I might use. I'll save that for a bit later. But that can help save my hands a bit from the pressure needed to exert. Needed to be exerted. The knuckles of my fingers, or the joints rather. I may use my knuckles. Might use my elbow, my forearm, which I think right now is a good candidate for using the forearm. So I'm I can use it to smooth. Good. Kind of looking at this head-neck relationship and the shoulder-arm relationship. These two areas get particularly tangled up with people. Okay, so I don't want to wear myself out immediately. So that's where we bring this body bar into the mix. It's very smooth, but it has different edges so that I can really get into areas, smooth areas. And I'm just going to use this. Really work in there and see if we can untangle the fibers. And this helps so that I can really use that pressure without making my hands very sore. So it's more effective and more efficient. Okay, let's go ahead and just turn it here and see if we can smooth some of this out. But this works pretty nicely on the sheet, yeah. Maybe we can get right here. There we go. So do let me know if it is too much. Even though we're going to be working deeply, that doesn't mean that you should be about to bite your tongue off or something. Especially because that means that the body, I'm just going to set this here at the end of the table, that means the body can lock up too, which might just make it worse. So we have to be patient, and you need to let me know if something's not right. Let's just bring this down. We're going to work the sacrum and the hip here. I'm just using my knuckles. And we can really get in there and smooth that around. And by the sacrum here, we can use an elbow and just use a bit of my body to bear down a little bit. Okay. So this is kind of how it's going to go through the whole process. Is I'll just be working into these areas, smoothing, maybe some cross fiber work. That sort of thing. So, some people quite like it if I just chat about something random while I'm doing this, just to keep up that rhythmic background sound. Let's just go ahead and smooth that out. But if you find it agreeable, I did just read a rather interesting paper on something called geoglyphs. So, geoglyphs are a type of earthwork, and they can be positive or negative. So, for example, the most famous geoglyph is called the Nazca Lines in Peru. And the Nazca Lines are negative geoglyphs because they're cut into the soil. The geoglyphs I'm most familiar with are the effigy mounds in Iowa, United States. And those are positive geoglyphs because they're made by mounding soil up on top of the ground. So, this paper I read was published in July 2026, and it was talking about, now, here's the thing. We're talking about Brazil, so Portuguese typically, I'm pretty sure. Basically not generally English, right? In English, this word would be acre. When I've heard this spelling of this word in other languages, it usually is more like acre. So that's the pronunciation I'm going to go with, just because I've only read it, I haven't heard it. So these were on the Accra geoglyphs. And these are in the Accra state of Brazil. They're not related to the Nazca Lines, but these were first discovered. I'm just going to move on to the other side here. They were first discovered in the 1970s with about 306 glyphs I had read somewhere. I'm not sure if that's the initial count or if that was the count before the study. But in one source I had read there were 306. And these were negative glyphs that had kind of a mounded outline, so they were cut into the earth, but they also were outlined with mounds of material, I assume soil, so that they were more prominent. These glyphs were generally, as far as I understood it, every picture I saw was of geometric shapes. So, squares, circles, that sort of thing. And one of the glyphs was dated to about 2,500 years ago. Dating these things is I do believe there is a way to date the earth itself where you can maybe go, I don't know, perhaps in the material around the glyphs and the outline. And I think you can date something by when the last time it was that it saw sunlight. Maybe it's more the UV radiation thing. But I think, if I do recall correctly rather, that it was dating either structures or tools or ceramics that were in the same area that were related to the glyphs. I imagine that, dating has become so much more accurate in recent years. There are so many ways to date things. Like I said, I think there's a way to be able to date material by seeing how old it was the last time it saw sunlight. Which is pretty crazy to me. I think it's, it's isotopes and things of that sort. It's dating in that way. But you can also do it by using context clues like pieces of pottery or discarded tools and see how old those are. I think that's generally how it's typically done. So in this area, obviously there was a people there, a civilization there. And they made all these glyphs. I mean, even if it was just the 306, that's still a lot. So there had to have been a lot of people. But in recent years, this civilization connected to the Accra geoglyphs has been named, again, forget pronunciation, but in English it would look like aquari. Maybe it's aquari, akiri, one of those. So it has a name, and in this study, the authors, their methodology for this study was using LiDAR, light detection and ranging, which uses lasers to send pulses, and you can take away, for example, the Amazon jungle and see what's underneath, because you have so many pulses that some of them do inevitably get underneath the leaves and hit the ground. So if you fire enough pulses, enough lasers, you can see what's on the ground without the trees in the way, without the vegetation. Use my knuckles in here to let me know if it's too much. So LiDAR has been incredible, I think. I mean, I am in love with LiDAR. Whoever came up with that, fully kissing them on the mouth. I mean, just beautiful, wonderful. I think that expression is only appropriate in fan fiction spaces, but and Tumblr, but the sentiment is what counts. But LiDAR, yeah, beautiful, beautiful technology, has come up with so many amazing things we've found. I mean, if someone made a list of everything we've found, lost cities, be pyramids, civilizations. I mean, I imagine that list would be very long at this point. I know it was used in the state of Iowa, for example, to see all the extant and probably many, if not most, burial mounds, or mounds in general, in the state of Iowa. So they could tell, where a mound was, but it wasn't there anymore. It had been ruined. It had been plowed over, maybe. And there were so many. So many. This entire landscape was just littered with them. They tended to be mostly around rivers. But, no one's seen that kind of unfiltered landscape since the steel plow, and since European American settlers settled this area. Okay, let's grab you. Let's just smooth everything out. So, but this way, no, we can't get them back, but we can see where they were. We can tell how many there were, or at least a very good guess. So LiDAR. My love letter to LiDAR. So this study found almost 400 more geoglyphs by using LiDAR. And their study area was 1,740 square miles, or about 4,500 square kilometers. So quite a big area. And in the study, imagine the whiplash that I had when I read that the acrogeoglyphs estimated about 306. And this study is saying that no, there are thousands, and actually there are probably more than 20,000 geoglyphs. And they dated all of this. Start working in your legs here. They dated these glyphs from about 600 BCE to 850 CE. Now that's an interesting number, particularly for the end number. Why? Because that's about the same time as we see the collapse of the classic Maya civilization, as well as other civilizations. People have posited that perhaps this was a climate issue, maybe, because some people have studied what the climate would have been at the time, and I think there would have been significant droughts at that time for 100 years, if I remember correctly. And so if you are trying to feed people in a drought for 100 years, eventually you're just going to have to go somewhere that it just works better. And so the people leave the great stone cities of the Maya. Well, it looks like these people in Brazil, in the Amazon, may have had a similar phenomenon happen at the same time. elbow and my arm, my upper arm, kind of smooth over this. So in the study, it's estimated that the peak of this civilization was probably about between 100 CE and 300 CE. And because of the glyphs, how many people it would take to build, how many people it would take to maintain, they're thinking that the peak of population was probably 1.25 million people to 3 million people in the Amazon. Wow. Really brilliant. Just amazing. I really feel that we do not give people that came before us enough credit, because to live in a rainforest environment like that, you would have had to do some soil amending. I mean, that's very acidic soil. It's very wet. You have predators, you have lots of venomous things. I mean, you would have really had to make the world work for you. You know, that takes engineering, that takes lots of observation and trial and error, and they obviously did it and thrived for quite a while. So we must give them snaps. It's quite amazing what people are able to do when they'd really like to do something, when they put their minds to it. Now, 1,000 miles away, you get to the most famous geoglyphs, and that is the Nazca Lines in the Nazca Desert of Peru. And the Nazca Lines are a mix of actual lines, just regular line work, and images. So there are hundreds of these glyphs, and the most famous one I typically see is the hummingbird. And they also had images like a monkey and a spider. And the Nazca Lines were they were cut into the dirt around 500 BCE to 500 CE. And we don't know that much. Not really. A lot of these geoglyphs, we don't really know anything at all, except for just some very basic information. We don't necessarily know who, we know when, we don't know why, we do know where, and we do know how, but that leaves a lot of questions still. But these geoglyphs can be found quite literally all over the world. All over. So you have another geoglyph that is really exquisite, just beautiful, called El Candelabro, still in Peru, and it is 560 feet tall, or about 170 meters, and it's 200 feet wide, or about 60 meters. And it looks like it's cut kind of into a hillside, so you don't have to see it from the air, you can see it right in front of it. And that one is dated to about 200 BCE, and that one was cut 2 feet deep into the earth. very crisp. And you know, these geoglyphs, they stay rather pristine because in this area it's very dry. Very, very dry, so you don't have to worry about the water's washing everything away. Now, like I said, the geoglyphs I'm most familiar with are the effigy mounds. They occur in northeast Iowa by Wisco, Wisconsin, in the United States. There are 206 mounds in total. You have linear, conical, and compound mounds, as well as effigies. 31 of the 206 mounds are effigy mounds. They are either birds or they are bears. So you have multiple areas where you can find them. So you have the marching bear group, which is probably the most famous, and that has 3 birds as well. You have the compound mound group with 1 bird and 1 bear. You have the great bear mound group, which is the biggest effigy, and that is 1 big bear. And then you have the little bear mound group, which is 1 little bear. Which is cute because I call my cat Kiwi. She is a little bear, baby bear, bear, ba-bear, ba-bear. She's so fuzzy. She looks like a little bear. But these are estimated to have had most of these built around 100 CE, so in the woodland period. And again, we don't know the exact people. We call this the mound builder culture, but at this point in time, I think this would have been Hopewell culture. So you have these people that have similar traditions to each other, and they are individual peoples, but because we don't know what they called themselves, we group them all together as a similar group. And this particular group was called the Hopewell. So I'm pretty sure that's who it'd be attributed to. Hopewell later becomes Oneota in this area, later becomes several different tribes of which we know of today because they still exist. They're still there. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and have you flip over. And let's just work right in here. I'm going to get a little deep. This might be a little sensitive, the upper chest area. Just let me know. This can get pretty knotted up. But even though I'm most familiar with those, just because they occur in my home state, that's not one of the most famous effigy mounds. Probably your most famous is going to be the Great Serpent Mound. And that is in the very cutely named town of Peebles, Ohio. Peebles. I wonder if that was somebody's last name, or I don't know. But the Great Serpent Mound is 1,348 feet long, or about 411 meters. And it is a positive glyph, so it is made by mounding soil, and it has this little spiral at the end of the tail, and then curves around, and then has the snake head with the open mouth. And that is estimated to have been built around 300 BCE. And I'm not very familiar with this period in this area, so I'm not sure if it is the Adena people or if this is something like the Hopewell culture where it's the Adena tradition or the Adena culture. I more err on the side of the culture because we just don't know what the people called themselves. Just working this down the arms a bit. Okay. Alright. And then one of your most famous besides the Nazca Lines is the Uffington White Horse in Oxfordshire in the United Kingdom. And this is this big, great white horse cut into a hill, and it's very stark. It's very easy to see and understand what the picture is even on the ground, because it is made of trenches filled with white chalk, so it's very bright white. It's 360 feet long, or about 110 meters. And it's thought to have been built between 1380 BCE and 550 BCE. Bring this down here. This might be a little intense. And then we go across the world again. And we have the Russian geoglyph. And the Russian geoglyph was found in 2011 using satellite imagery. So the Russian geoglyph occurs in the Ural Mountains of Russia. And it is this big moose or elk-like image. You can see the antlers and the legs, but it's got like a real long nose, almost like a proboscis kind of thing, which I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. Don't imagine we can ask. We can just guess. Okay. That one is dated by the things we find around it, so that one was using ceramics and tools that were related to the glyphs, and they're dated to about 3,000 years ago. And then if you jump backwards a little bit, you have the Konkan geoglyphs. Again, pronunciation, I've only read the word, not necessarily saying it right. This is occurring in the Konkan region of India, and these ones, they are very beautiful. They are just so pretty. There's a lot of different glyphs. It's not just squares and circles, but they made hundreds to thousands of shaped glyphs. You have humans, elephants, sharks, tigers, birds. They did a lot of different imageries. And what's interesting about this one, I couldn't really get a good date as to when they think most of them were built, but their estimate was 12,000 years ago. So if we use 200 CE as our base, we would have 10,000 BCE, which is not as far-fetched as you would think. or at least as I would have thought, because we have plenty of petroglyphs, which are images carved into rock faces, rock pieces on the ground. Some of these are extremely old. They are tens of thousands of years old. So that's not strange at all. We're going to just finish by working on your arms here. So, you know, all these little rock drawings definitely generally predate these geoglyphs, but once people started figuring out they could make giant images on the ground, they went ham, like everywhere in the world. I mean, I named quite a few, but there are way more. They are everywhere. It's kind of funny to see that occur throughout history where, you know, at this time people couldn't communicate over these really great lengths of distance, you know, but you see people at the same time independently come up with the same ideas. For example, acupuncture as a treatment has been around in China for a very long time, right? Well, you have something very similar that occurs in Central America as well. If I recall correctly, I believe this was called pinchar. And I can't remember what they use. They use some kind of spine as their needles, but they have their own form of acupuncture that occurs around the same time. And they're not chatting with the people from China. They're doing this independently. So, it's kind of funny how sometimes there's this saying that there are no new ideas, no original ideas. And you look throughout history, and even something as simple as pyramids. We see pyramids pop up in different places, most notably Egypt, Nubia, and in the Maya civilization, as well as the Aztec, but then you've also got the oh god, it's not Tenochtitlan, but it was the Teotihuacan. There we go, Teotihuacan culture, of which that's where the Aztecs got a lot of their ideas from. You know, these are occurring maybe not super close in time, but they are occurring very early in written history. Just going to bring this all throughout the body here. Just to link everything together. Yeah, it's amazing the things that people will do just for the love of the game sometimes. There are certain things we found that had a specific purpose, like the desert kites that you find. I know there's some like in Turkey, you see them a lot in the Middle East, where they were actually animal traps, but those looked like some kind of geoglyph as well. But they're used for trapping animals. But then these other glyphs, we don't know why they were there. I mean, especially the Uffington White Horse. I mean, why dig a horse on top of a hill, if not for the love of the game? Of which I say, that is so rad. Humans are so cool. So, that is going to conclude our massage today. Are there any places that I missed that you feel needed a bit more? Okay, pretty thoroughly wrung out. Yeah, alright. So, I'd like to thank you so much for listening to my little ramble on geoglyphs and for allowing me to do this massage. I hope you have a whale of a day and a good rest of your night.